All right, we'll get started. Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar. Today, we'll discuss the ins and outs of maintaining SOC 2 compliance through automation. We will be joined by our partners over at Drata. Let me tell you a little bit about our host organization. Drata is the world's most advanced security and compliance automation platform with the mission to help businesses earn and keep the trust of their users, customers, partners, and prospects. With Drata, thousands of companies streamline over 10 compliance frameworks such as SOC 2, ISO 27001, GDPR, and more through continuous automated control monitoring and evidence collection, resulting in a strong security posture, lower costs, and less time spent preparing for annual audits. If you would like to learn more, you can visit drata.com. Now let's talk about RSI. RSI is a premier managed IT security and compliance advisory service provider. We have professionals for all cybersecurity and compliance needs, from data privacy to PCI, healthcare data compliance, cyber defense, penetration testing, federal programs, and more. These are just some of the services we specialize in as a full suite cybersecurity solution provider. We work with some of the world's leading companies, institutions, and governments to ensure the safety of their information and their compliance with applicable regulations. Now I'll introduce you to our panelists. We'll start by introducing Kevin. Before joining Drata, Kevin built successful partnership programs as the head of business development at Thousand Eyes, acquired by Cisco, Expanse, acquired by Palo Alto Networks, and most recently as the Cortex BD lead at Palo Alto Networks. He has a passion for building better together partnerships that lead to meaningful outcomes. Customers know that they can rely on these partners to act as trusted advisors for best-in-class technology and services. Next, we have Carlos. Carlos is a seasoned executive with 25 plus years of experience building and establishing specialized technology, risk, and cybersecurity programs. During his career trajectory, Carlos has designed, implemented, and led the information security organization for multiple Fortune 500 companies such as Workday, First Data, and Electronic Arts. He is a strong advocate for security at all levels of the organization and knows how to build executive and board level support in order to achieve success. Before I pass it off to Carlos, I would like to just go over a few FAQs. First, any questions that you have throughout the presentation, please just use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Be sure to use the Q&A button to submit all of your questions throughout. Also, you will receive a copy of the presentation, ACP certificate, and a recording via email tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. I'll now pass it over to Carlos and let you take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today talking about compliance and the fascinating world of SOC 2. We are here to actually talk a little bit about how we believe that SOC 2 is important for any organization. So we're looking at drivers that will actually help your organization to actually decide if SOC 2 is the right standard, but also we're looking to actually have a conversational and references so that you understand, why this has value for you and why we're looking to actually execute these programs and looking at ways to automating as well. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about compliance drivers, and in that regard, we definitely need to understand that regulatory compliance is a continuous evolving landscape where standards could frequently change and could have definitely changes that represent challenges for any organization. So we need to make sure that companies stay up to date in this regard, and that auditors that participate actively with this process are aware of all these changes. Also understand changes and remain dynamic. And we also understand as well, and it's really important that we realize data security and privacy can be also a very complex situation in nature, and we definitely need to amplify the way we dedicate efforts to maintain all these new changes based on all these standard modifications. And then obviously there are many companies out there that struggle with compliance to the usual suspects, limited resources, budget constraint situation. We have a good staff, but maybe not fully dedicated to this particular effort. And then obviously technology challenges all over the place as well. We may have certain controls in place, but not all the controls that are required in order to, get all these standards in place, and a combination of privacy controls that might be interesting to have and nice to have, but maybe we don't have all of them because maybe, we put that on hold because we're waiting for Q3 to actually have additional budget to make it happen. Or maybe those resources are busy deploying other solutions or taking care of other GRC challenges. And then company needs to be definitely aware that third-party risk is also important. How we manage the relationship with our third-party vendors and suppliers, so that compliance is definitely top of mind, but we have certain requirements in place so that they can actually help us continue to evaluate these controls, and that they need to be part of the process also as well, because it could represent also certain level of liability as well. So yeah, that's in a nutshell a few of those challenges that we've seen, and we're looking forward to actually continue to be compliant, right, with new regulations, new laws in place. And we all know what could happen if we don't, understand all those. And it should be a balance, right? And a trade-off between, all this regulatory compliance and controls that need to be in place. But also, if we don't meet those minimal expectations, then we can actually face serious repercussions also as well. And in a nutshell, we need to understand that we're doing this for the best interest of the company, to protect the company's reputation, to be ready in case we have a natural disaster or we have other types of emergencies that could actually lead companies to face challenges. And if we don't have a good business continuity plan in place, and that could definitely represent higher recovery time, disaster recovery will be in jeopardy, and the recovery of the data could be in jeopardy. So putting all those, controls at risk, and then our clients would definitely be at risk as well, because we don't have a compromise from that perspective. And then reputation, as mentioned, lead to protect the company in a better way, but then to have the necessary ethical behavior to continue to attract more clients or better quality clients, make sure that we keep building up the relationship with our investors, employees, and in general, we're looking at automating, at improving operational efficiency, and delivering more with quality, and making sure that everything we do is around protecting the company's reputation and standards, so that everybody have trust in the way we're operating. So, and now we'd like to actually talk a little bit about what can Drata and RSI partnership can do in order to actually improve those challenges. So we're definitely partnering to facilitate collaboration and have an enabling real-time communication and improve that operational efficiency by adding additional value and having a very automated first type of approach, innovative approach, where we reduce the time required to actually conduct all these controls. So it's a more innovative way of doing things, in terms of just saying, hey, you're managing these controls, working on those documents. So we're looking at improving the old-fashioned way of doing things, and then adding an AI and ML and automate the process, so that we understand the value we're we need to give is about operational efficiency, it's about quick response, it's about making ourselves available to provide the right tools as well, and reduce the manual labor required, the man-hour required to actually execute these assessments and these audits, which will be definitely impacting positively in cost savings as well. So we're looking at improving the overall cost-benefit relationship and reducing the time required to execute all those processes internally. That definitely, we know that it could be challenging for many organizations to dedicate all those full-time resources and spend cycles on cycles to actually execute those assessments, those audits, and then make sure that we have the necessary follow-up in place to track the progress on all these audits, and then work together to actually improve the overall execution time. So now, yeah, go ahead.
We're going to have a poll question for compliance drivers poll. Encourage everyone to participate. This one is, what is the most common reason companies fail to be SOC 2 compliant? See those answers coming in. Thank you. All right, we'll give it just a few more seconds and we'll close that poll. All right, thank you everyone for answering. All right, gonna share our results here. All right, so lack of documentation. A common reason for SOC 2 non-compliance is lack of proper documentation at 43%. Inadequate information security policies. Many companies fail to develop and implement comprehensive policies at 23%. Poor access controls at 7%, and lack of regular monitoring at 27%. Carlos and Kevin, anything to share here?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, it seems pretty spot on, right? Compliance is pretty manual. The larger your company gets and scales, the bigger challenges you have. So, yeah, there's some comparisons we'll probably talk through in the next section, but it seems pretty logical to me, folks.
All right, anything to add, Carlos?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that reflects into the way we should be taking care of this in terms of, allocating resources, making sure that we have the right documentation in place. And then obviously a combination of all of that will improve the operational efficiency of the whole process. But yeah, absolutely, makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll continue. We'll have another poll later. All right. I'll let you guys take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we should actually mention is the state of GRC. So we need to ensure that we understand how we are managing GRC in organizations, and normally in medium-sized, large-sized organizations, we have at least 25 employees involved in the whole compliance process, which is a lot. And obviously we need to realize that we are spending also a huge amount of man hours working on achieving that compliance standard and also maintaining the compliance standard as well. That's significant. That's a significant number. And those hours are being invested. And we don't have all the time a warranty that what we're doing is essentially maintaining that level of compliance required to actually do things the right way. It could lead to a ton of manual effort and non-automated way of doing things. And it could lead to error as well, because we're dedicating maybe one resource for that particular activity, or maybe we have a second pair of eyes taking a look at that activity. And we realize, hey, what are we doing here? And scaling isn't easy either, because, you know, if we want to continue growing the compliance program, then we need to actually look for those professionals out there. We need to actually look for, you know, maybe auditors that can help us to actually understand what we have going on in the environment. And then, oh yeah, but how are you doing this? And are you taking care of all these areas? We don't have a single source of truth that contains relevant data that could lead us to say, okay, how we are doing things. Do we have a single pane of glass that contains all these relevant action items, maybe relevant actionable KPIs that could give us an indication of the things that we're doing wrong, but also the way we solve these findings, and also start executing and remediating those findings. So there is a lack of automation in overall. So it's very important to actually highlight that this is the actual picture we have today with GRC. And in terms of the continuous compliance process or program, we need to ensure that we have a remediation in place as well. So we need to look at this from a holistic point of view. So we have all these changes that could represent challenges for any organization, but it could also represent an opportunity to actually maximize the results and maximize the way we're doing things, improve the way we're doing things. And in terms of that, compliance automation will not only help to streamline the audit process, but also will help us to improve and boost productivity. And by doing that, we'll be in a position to say, hey, based on all these controls we implemented and this automation layer we have up there, we were able to improve the overall security posture. We were able to be compliant as well, and then spend cycles in navigating through all these challenges and making sure that everything we had is under control. So replacing all of those manual controls with an automated way of doing things is definitely what's going to make a huge impact in the organization. And we're going to be seeing things like the traditional spreadsheet, where we are actually taking a look at all these processes and taking a look at maybe cloud service providers, SaaS vendors, and third-party risk assessment, and all of that is being replaced by some other way of doing things, where we have a more automation in place. We have a collection, an automated way of collecting evidence also as well, or our collection of evidence, so that we address compliance issues and we ultimately reduce the risk of failed audits, where we have certain actions that are being executed successfully, but then there is an opportunity also as well to do things differently, because, you know, we may have missed certain action items because we don't have those documented properly, or we don't have an automated way to track the progress of that. And maybe we left those things in a drawer, and then it's like, oh yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll fix that. And then at the end of the day, we're not getting things done because we're not dedicating the necessary energy and the necessary traction to make it happen. And things to look from a compliance perspective is also the way we configure those frameworks as well, and we natively integrate from an API integration perspective with other solutions as well. And having a good partner is definitely essential to make it happen as well. So we have all these controls in place. We have an automated way of doing things, but then we need to have a good partnership to ensure that compliance automation is happening, that we have a streamlined audit process in place, that we have a stronger compliance posture and a good security posture and privacy posture, therefore, that we are looking at improving the productivity of the organization. So that's, in my opinion, key. And yeah, I would say that it's really fascinating the way we're getting here in terms of all those challenges and making sure that that governance is in place, risk and compliance is in place, and that we have a good GRC program. So Drata has launched recently an open API product that is designed to improve the way we're handling compliance by giving customers deeper connections and integrations to build creative solutions. So to be able to manage the risk also effectively, to handle their compliance needs effectively as well. And that REST API standard that we're looking to actually improve is definitely empower customers to make things better from that perspective, and the ability to generate and manage API keys as well. Make sure that we have a good relationship as well with first-party developers and third-party solutions. And so this environment will provide a different way of handling access and a granular access and control with custom read and write permission. So this is a different way of doing things where we actually track the way the keys, and we manage the customer's relationship in a better way, so that we have better controls in place, and that's really exciting.
Yeah. So, oh, go ahead. Yeah, and maybe I think part of this also, right, is at Drata we have over 2,500 customers, and 2 years we've been in existence, and I think part of the challenge that we see customers coming to us for is saying, hey, we need SOC 2 today to be able to go sell at market, or we need ISO or GDPR to go sell internationally, or we need CMMC or FedRAMP to go sell to the government. And the idea for especially organizations that are kind of newer to compliance is that I'm just going to get compliance now and I'm set. That's just not the way the compliance works anymore, right? Continuous compliance is kind of the analogy that we'll use is if we're at a restaurant eating together, and in the window the letter grade is A, meaning that the inspector came, who knows when, probably 3-6 months ago, and at that time said, hey, this place has an A. We're eating 3 to 6 months later. So if there's rats there, they're not coming again for another 6 months, right? And so the idea that compliance is this thing that, hey, we just, we need to be able to get it at this audit, and then a year later at the next audit, and kind of continuously from there on out, it's just not enough if you want to go sell to companies that actually care about security of the tools that they're using. So a good example at Drata, right? We're a 400-person company. I wouldn't call us an enterprise by any stretch. We won't even do a POC of another SaaS platform until we see their SOC 2 and are able to look at what their continuous controls that are in place. So again, the idea that like SOC 2 is enough, maybe for some companies, but for the ones that are going to spend the actual money on your software and on your services, it's simply just not. And so that's kind of where Drata's taken this idea of like, hey, forget about the point in time audit, right? That's important, but being able to stay compliant in between the audits as well is massively important.
Really like that analogy there, Kevin. So we do have a question. Can you please comment on the AICPA alert issued last December about the quality of SOC audits where the compliance automation tools like Drata are used?
Yeah, so actually, whoever posted that, if you don't mind sending the link, we haven't actually seen that alert, so we'd love to explore that further. I think the part of the challenge is there's a lot of competitors in our space, and the way that they go to market is this idea of like, get SOC 2 in 2 weeks. Drata's not doing that. We're not interested in trying to tell you a time, like what timeline it takes you to get to SOC 2 is completely up to you. We're certainly going to help accelerate that, but we can't guarantee anything. Like, for example, if you're not compliant in terms of your employees accepting acceptable use policy, having Drata doesn't force them to accept acceptable use policies, right? That's a company culture thing. So I would love to comment on that. I haven't seen the article. So if you have the link to it, feel free to post that as another question and we can review it. I'll probably hear on the call. And again, I think there's just a lot of organizations where they're partnering with audit firms that are, those audit firms are incentivized just to give you the audit as quickly as possible. So, some of that is on that compliance solution, not vetting the audit firms that they're working with. At Drata, we vet all the audit firms we're working with to make sure that the ones that we actually have listed on our auditor directory, we're agnostic. We're not getting paid by any of those audit firms to work with them. But we'll work with audit firms whether they have one or two people or they're as big as PwC and EY. So I think it's kind of a thing where there's this race to the bottom in terms of price in some respects. And that's kind of on us here at Drata and in the audit world as well, where if price is the thing that's most important to you, you're going to get what you pay for. And there's plenty of audit firms out there that you can go pay $5,000 to, and they're chop shops, and they'll do that audit quick for you. And if the challenge is with those audit firms, if you want to go sell to legit companies, like you got to deal with JP Morgan Chase or Target or Best Buy or whoever, them getting your SOC 2 report's not enough. They look at who your audit firm is. Even here at Drata, we've kind of continuously up-leveled who our audit firms are to the point where we're at the point where we probably need a big four audit firm to be able to continue the growth that we have as a company. And so, I kind of, the other part that I'll talk about here quickly on an analogy perspective is think about as an organization, I can't see what companies are on this webinar right now, but for companies that are larger in scale, like this probably doesn't apply to you, but for companies that are earlier stage, your Series A, Series B, kind of moving along, understand that the things that you buy now are the things that you need to scale. I'll give you a perfect example. At Drata, we used as our main CRM HubSpot when we first became a company. And HubSpot's a great solution, didn't really scale for us as we grew massively and really quickly. So we need to switch to Salesforce pretty quick. It's been almost a year. And it's not a HubSpot issue, it's not a Salesforce issue, it's a trying to transition from one solution to another issue, right? And I think that's the challenge, is especially in your earlier days as a company, we think less about, hey, will this solution scale for me as I grow? And more of, does it solve the problem I need right now? And just, that's all I care about. So, some problems are probably, it's best to solve them that way, but most problems, you need to solve them in a scalable way, because that problem isn't going to go away. And it's going to get worse if the solution you decide to go with, or the audit firm, et cetera, doesn't scale with you. So I think that's pretty important to keep in mind, especially when it comes to security and compliance.
Great feedback, Kevin. Appreciate it. We'll launch into our next poll. This is something we're very curious about. How many people in your organization use spreadsheets to manage compliance? See those answers rolling in. Thank you.
I'm guessing it's more so what percentage of your compliance team, right? Because obviously most of your company is not managing compliance.
Correct. All right, give it a few more seconds, then we'll end that poll. All right, so none, 11%, less than 10% of employees at 18%, 10 to 25% of employees at 18%, and 25 to 50% of employees at 20%, and more than 50% of employees at 32%. All right, so Kevin and Carlos, any feedback there?
I'm guessing for the people that said none, you probably already have an automation solution in place, or you don't manage compliance. And again, for the rest of this, it depends on how you read the question, obviously. But I think that's, spreadsheets are the challenge. This is whether you're a 10-person company or a 10,000-person company. I think part of this is, the security market is very saturated with a lot of solutions. Some are great, some are not. And this has kind of been on the vendor side where we've, even Drata, like the platform continues to improve, but we owe the market better than I think what the market has gotten for the last probably decade or so.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to continue.
I think we have one question here from Aslan. How can Drata help with moving from one auditor to another? Plenty of audit firms that we can recommend. Again, we don't even have our people usually talk to it. It's just on our website. Our customers literally review our audit firms. If you go to drata.com and click on the auditors, you'll be able to get to the auditor directory pretty quick. The auditors talk about themselves. You can contact them directly. And again, look at Drata customer reviews of those audit firms. But we're auditor agnostic. Our platform doesn't change. Switching audit firms is, at least in the platform, is as easy as removing one and adding the other. And again, but compliance is not a one size fits all. So if you're working, if you're a larger company, SOC 2 probably means something different to you. You probably have different standards and controls in place than a smaller company for SOC 2. But again, all of that is customizable in the platform.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. All right, and we'll give that over to you for the data collection to explain how Drata does that.
No problem. So Drata is pretty simple. Everything we do is based on integrations. Integration is what fuels the automation. So if you go to drata.com/integrations, it lists out all the integrations we have today, plenty more coming this year and in the future. But the idea is that they're all read-only, API-based, least privilege access integrations. So we're not actually doing anything weird with your data. All of it's being stored in AWS in a private database architecture, so none of your data commingles with other customers. That's pretty important and a pretty big differentiator for Drata. But the idea is that we are pulling in the data that we need to provide the evidence back to you and to your audit firm to say whether or not control X, Y, or Z is being adhered to or not. So for example, with AWS, testing like an S3 bucket to see if it's encrypted at rest or not, or if it's exposed. We're not here to compete with this Laceworks or Wizzes or Orcas of the world. We're going to be integrated with them shortly. Same thing with vulnerability management solutions like Tenable. The idea really for Drata is pulling in data from everywhere to create a contextual layer of trust between you and your customers, prospects, and partners. And so today, the core focus there is pulling in compliance data, but that is graduated into risk with risk management through, and then what it's kind of going into more so is just more broadly GRC with maintaining that depth of integration and automation. And so understand when we build these integrations, the way that they're built, set up is not only just to, for example, integration between, I was at Expanse and we would scan your IPs and then we would push those to Tenable, right? That's an integration. There's nothing necessarily that automated about that. Drata, when we build these integrations, not only are we building that integration with Tenable, for example, we have to determine when we pull in the data from Tenable, what controls does it satisfy and how does it satisfy those controls, right? That is narrowly important for what we're doing from a quality perspective to ensure that you have an accurate understanding of where you are compliance-wise and that you're not going to have friction with an audit firm or a vendor that you're having to provide that evidence to. So again, like the way, there's a lot of words on this slide, obviously, but rest assured, the other part that's really important here is Drata is SOC 2 compliant across all 5 TSCs. Processing integrity is the one that's probably most important when it comes to this slide. And what that means for Drata is the way that we're pulling data, the data that we're collecting, and the way that we are then displaying that data is something that can be depended on, that it's accurate, that there's no need to worry about any type of false positives, right? So that's most people, for SOC 2, type 2, security is the only one of the 5 TSCs that is required. Drata has gone above and beyond and gotten all 5 TSCs, in addition to ISO, HIPAA, and many other frameworks as well. So we're a compliance company at our core. We have to make sure that we're kind of walking the walk, talking the talk there. And so just kind of high-level overview. I think we've kind of talked about this already, but that's the idea. Is what we're doing with Drata is again, automation first. We're trying to help you connect all of your tech stack, pulling all that data on a continuous basis. Do that daily, right? To reinforce that idea of like, hey, this matters. Again, very simple to use. This is I'll just tell an inside story to everybody. I joined the company literally just a year and 2 days ago. 2 years ago, my younger brother applied here, had an offer in hand. It was the very early days of Drata. And he asked me what I thought. And I told him I thought the product got me a demo. I thought the product was really boring. I stand by that. I stand by that Drata is a boring product. And I mean that in the best way possible, because that is how easy Drata is to use, right? That's my point here is like, I'll give you a good example. Most companies I've been at, there's more SEs or as many solutions engineers as there is sales reps to help explain it to the customers. We have 50 salespeople here. We have 3 solution engineers and 2,500 customers. Over 90% of our customers didn't even do a proof of concept before deciding to move forward with Drata. That is how simple and easy to use Drata is as a solution. So whether you have 10 people and literally nobody on staff that has any security experience, and you want to work with a partner like RSI, obviously, or you have thousands of employees and have a massive security team, it scales all the way up and is providing what you need from a core competency perspective to really centralize your GRC practice. And then again, kind of configure away. The idea here is compliance is not a one-size-fits-all thing. What SOC 2 means to company X is not necessarily the way SOC 2 looks to company Y. It's subjective in some ways. Same thing with ISO, same thing with many other frameworks. Some of you have regional needs that you have to deal with as well. Again, all the customization you need is in the platform to be able to meet those needs and to make sure that it's tailored to you. Monitor continuously, we talked about that, being audit prepared, and then just de-risking, right? So the idea of going beyond compliance to say, hey, yeah, we're SOC 2 compliant, but like what risks to the business might we be seeing here? And also tying that to automation that's in the platform, right? Like, are we at risk for a DDoS attack? There's nothing in SOC 2 that says you have to be prepared for that. But that's certainly a risk to the business, and being able to quantify that as well as something that Drata recently has come out with and is certainly continuing to evolve that offering as well. And here's the platform. I think I've kind of illustratively talked about this already, but again, the input is certainly you connecting your tech stack, deciding which requirements and controls matter to you based on the frameworks, and then policies. We have a policy engine as well, where you're able to create your own, use our own templates out of the box if you'd like, edit them all on the platform, but all of that is going into Drata, and then the continuous testing of that, whether it's, again, a control like, are we compliant from a, is customer data encrypted at rest versus are all of our policies being accepted by our employees, like acceptable use policy, backup policy, you name it. So even as a Drata employee, I log in once a year to re-accept my policies, or when policies get updated, which can happen more often. In addition to security awareness training, that's also built into the platform with integrations with KnowBe4 and others. And so all of that's there. It's all centralized, but then the output that you're getting here, again, the audit hub, so the auditor is able to come in, get their own dedicated view. You don't want them seeing everything. They don't want to see everything. They're just seeing what they need for whatever framework it is they're auditing you on, being able to have that continuous view of your compliance posture, risk management. And then Trust Center is one we haven't really touched on yet. If you go to trust.drata.com or pretty much any of our customers.com, what you'll find is literally a trust page that for us, when we're talking to customers and they want to see our SOC 2 or HIPAA, we don't actually need to get on a call with them. They go there, they fill out some information, they sign an NDA, they have access to all of our reports. In addition to our policies, they can see real-time monitoring of our compliance posture. So things like, do we have password policy in place and enforced, and a number of other things. So again, if you check out trust.drata.com, you'll see what I'm talking about, and all of that's available to customers as well, to have that kind of real-time trust layer exposed on the internet with customers. Kind of our initial soiree into third-party risk management. Cool. And then, in terms of, I've kind of gone ahead on some of this stuff, but just functionality, right? Like, again, private database architecture, this is massively important. We are collecting, in some cases, sensitive data. You're going to want to make sure that that's not being commingled. You're going to have a tough time finding other solutions in the space that don't do what we do, that do what we do. Most of them are, if not all, are multi-tenanted at this point, so that data being commingled. Not ideal. Again, we talked about the 100% SOC 2 coverage across all 5 TSCs. Any of you on this call that are SOC 2 compliant today know that the only one you actually had to get passed on was security. And nothing wrong with that. We're just, for Drata, again, we want to walk the walk, talk the talk. Automated and manual collection. So again, there's some stuff we can't automate. We can't automate you having a board meeting. That's a requirement for SOC 2 requirements. We do enable you to then upload that to the platform and have alerting to tell you when you need to go in and re-upload that with control owners, et cetera. Again, all customizable. And then again, finally, the customized and dedicated view to the audit firm, right? So there are some enterprises that don't want to share that with their audit firm, want to handle it outside of product, no problem. But it does make it a lot easier. We have testimonials from a lot of audit firms, big and small, talking about how they use that the Drata platform with their customers to be able to do that in a much more seamless manner. We also, with some audit firms, not all, some audit firms are able to offer preferred rates that they offer because it's less time intensive for them to perform audits when Drata is involved. Yeah. So I think that's just kind of, this thing's pretty illustrative here, but again, the idea here is what Drata is doing is super impactful, but we are only a platform, right? There's still, in many cases, a massive need for services, especially if you're building out a compliance program where perhaps you don't have a big team or just getting started. And that's where we've seen a ton of success with the folks over at RSI who come in and are able to help you not only get going, but build a practice that scales for the future. So I'll let Carlos talk through that. Carlos, I think you're on mute if you can hear us.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, absolutely. I believe that it's essential to continue scaling and to dedicate some time and definitely improve our operational efficiency. Take a look at all these controls is essential, but definitely have a customized way of managing those policies, making sure that we have a good integration with our solutions in the cloud, the infrastructure we own, the applications we have. And in order to actually succeed, we need to have all those, pieces in the ecosystem connected and have a good compliance posture in place and with a good automated solution that could actually lead to better compliance programs to continue remediating, implementing all these finding remediation, and then at the end of the day, have a better understanding of what's out there, be up to date with policies and changes on those standards, and then have the necessary partnership also, as mentioned, is essential to ensure that we are getting all these back and we're getting the value we need to continue scaling our compliance program. Yeah, and in turn,
yeah, Carlos?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. All to you.
Yeah, no, in terms of the compliance and how compliance program impacts the business and how we can actually scale, we need to ensure that we are aligned with internationally recognized standards such as ISO 27001, as mentioned, in the privacy space, GDPR. If we actually take a look at the way we need to do things in terms of privacy, and obviously state of California have a specific, state of New York has other specifics, but this standard is definitely key if we are actually making, or having a good relationship with entities in Europe, and we are actually transferring data between Europe and North America as well. How we actually contain data cross-border to make sure that we don't have any impact from a privacy regulation perspective. And then also mostly related with NIST as well, in American standard in regards to how we manage the security organization. And then SOC is a little bit more specific around privacy, other controls that need to be in place, and make sure that, encryption is in place, at rest, in transit, that we have a healthy security posture, that we're managing logs effectively, we're handling the CM ingestion of logs effectively, and that we have all this relationship in place. And then other standards, if we continue to engage with the federal government as well, FedRAMP frameworks is essential to ensure that we have an isolated environment to be onboarding federal contractors or government entities. So there is a ton of opportunity with CMMC and FedRAMP specifically to ensure that we are growing our federal government opportunities as well. And it's essential that we follow this compliance program as well. And then consolidating, automating, centralizing, making sure that we have a good monitoring in place, that we control the way we're handling the compliance program by adding an automated layer. And we actually report back to the business and say, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is what we did in Q1. This is what we did at the end of the year. And this is how we did it. So it's very important to actually take a look at all these options and make sure that we invest in centralizing and automating.
All right, Carlos and Kevin, thank you both so much for that presentation. We're going to open the floor up for some questions. So if you would like to drop your questions in the Q&A by clicking the Q&A button, you can do so now.
Yeah, I actually have. So we found I forget, it was anonymous, I don't know who asked, but about the AICPA concerns around SOC 2 automation tools. We have found the PDF. It's 4 pages. I quickly read through the part where they're talking about. So I just address, it's a great question. A few of these bullet points. So here's a good point. Some SOC 2 tool providers enter into business relationships with CPA firms that will provide the SOC 2 audit. It raises concerns whether such firms are meeting ethical requirements around marketing and advertising. That's a great point. There's something called bundling that you'll see some of our competitors doing. Here's what they're doing. They are selling you a bundled audit package. It's their compliance tool plus an audit. Okay. Here's what's happening. You don't know what the cost is of the audit versus the cost is of the automation platform. You also are prepaying for the full thing. You don't need to prepay for an audit until the audit actually happens. Yet these competitors are doing this. And the other thing they're doing here is they're working with 4 or 5 firms who are lower priced on average because they know you have a budget, 20K, 30K, whatever it is. And so what happens is you go to them with that budget and they know that now they'll get more of that budget to them and they'll only have to pay out 5K or whatever it is to the audit firm, right? That is exactly what's happening. Drata is not doing anything like that. When you pay for Drata, you will pay for Drata. And if you'd like to talk to another audit firm, we have plenty that we're willing to recommend to you. We have preferred rates that they offer, but you will contract with them because that is the way it should be. And that way, if at some point you decide that you don't want to do your SOC 2 audit with them anymore, you don't have to. And you haven't paid them anything, so you're free and clear. We have the same concerns that the AICPA has and think that what's happening in the market in terms of this bundling thing is, if it's not illegal, it's pretty gray area. The other thing is some audit organizations identifying SOC 2 tool provider websites do not appear to be licensed CPA firms. Again, we have the same concern. You won't find that on our website. If someone does, let us know, but that auditor directory is only firms that are licensed. And it's not just SOC 2, by the way, it's ISO, much other frameworks. SOC 2 providers have a related CPA firm that provide so I know 2 of our competitors, one actually is doing audits themselves. I think they've pretty much built their own audit firm. Another one just jettisoned 3 employees from their company to go start their own audit firm. And that audit firm, in the title of their audit firm, has literally the competitor's name embedded in its title. So again, we share the same concern with the AICPA. SOC tools are often marketed to startup organizations led by management who do not have expertise in IT security. So the idea here is that we are preying on companies who don't have a security leader. In my opinion, we are providing a solution to companies that need help with compliance automation, who can work with a partner like RSI, where they have security gaps. But I guess we can just disagree on that one. And service auditors whose clients use SOC 2 tools appear to believe that the use of such tools somehow eliminates or reduces their performance and reporting responsibilities under professional standards. Actually, our competitors, what they use against us is that Drata has too many controls on SOC 2. Again, you can decide what's in scope and out of scope. That's completely up to you. We're going to provide to you the maximum to make sure that if you want to go the full way and want to have your scope increased as possible, that's your call. But we don't do any audits. So us telling you have to have this, or we're never going to do that because we're not an audit firm. Again, completely agree with the AICPA and understand why they have concerns there. And then the final one that's on top, service auditors may over-rely on the information provided to SOC 2 tools without adequately testing. That sounds like an audit firm that's not very good. Again, what Drata is doing is making sure we're working with the audit firms that we know provide a good service. You will not see them on our website. And if we start getting complaints about them, we remove them. We've had a couple in the past where we've done that. So again, whoever elevated this, thank you. I actually think that as a company, we've probably put out a statement responding to a lot of this, but all of these concerns are totally justified, except for the one about SOC 2 automation platforms preying on smaller companies, but whatever. And I think, for any of you, we welcome you to go talk to competitors. You will understand why the AICPA has those concerns, but you will not see anything like that with Drata. So I know that was a few minutes, but that was a good question. I like getting those.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you so much for digging into that, and quick reader.
Yeah, no problem.
So we have another question from Brian. Can Drata help me manage the risk or gaps that were found after the audit?
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%. We can also work with your audit firm, by the way. There's some audit firms, folks, we haven't talked to yet. There's tons of audit firms. I have a whole team underneath me that reports up, my audit alliances team, who helps organize and train those firms. So, and Brian, how we can take that, we can take a look, and then basically by plugging in your tech stack into Drata, right, then we're able to identify the gaps pretty quick. So we have a pretty easy import template that helps us use that to then go in and import what that is. But in terms of like actually doing the remediation work, et cetera, like that's where we draw the line, right? We're an automation platform. We're not services. That's if that's a need for you, I'd highly recommend working with the folks at RSI. But in terms of identifying the gaps, that is exactly what the solution does.
Right. Thank you, Kevin. And we have a few more minutes. Does anybody have any Q&As that they would like to draw for Carlos or Kevin? All right.
When it comes to SOC 2 controls, what is Drata not good at? So SOC 2, we're great at. SOC 2 is 90% of our customers in SOC 2. There's not great. I mean, there's just stuff we don't automate because we can't. Again, I can't automate you having a board meeting. I would say, there's frameworks where we have less controls that are automated, like PCI is not as built out. We have all the controls in place, but in terms of we need more integrations with solutions that play more of a role in PCI, right? So like, for example, Very Good Security, there's a PCI company that we haven't built an integration with yet. And by doing so, we will be able to automate more of the PCI controls from an evidence collection standpoint. So all of that is in progress. The other thing I think to keep in mind, the question I'll get a lot, I'm surprised we haven't got it yet, is what percentage of controls do you automate for, framework X or framework Y? For SOC 2, it's 60 to 70%. For ISO, it's close to that. For some, it's more, some it's less. I think the thing to remember is that all controls are not created equal. So for example, having a board, there we go, Michael Watkins, thank you. Having a board meeting is a control, right? And is customer data encrypted at rest a control? Those are two controls. They are not the same in terms of how much time and effort has to go into improving them. Board meeting's pretty easy. Here it is. I did the board meeting. Great. Is all of my customer data encrypted at rest? Yeah, have fun with that one. That's going to take you a while to get all that scoped out. So again, my point here is like, I can, SOC 2 70%. Is it 70% of the effort? Probably not. Most of our organizations, we have some case studies on this on the website, believe they're saving between 60 to 80% of the time it takes on an annual basis with compliance, and about 80 to 90% of the time it takes with their audit firm. That's a soft cost though. Some of you are going to love that. Some of you are going to go, I don't care about soft costs. We get that. That's the data we have today. I think the other thing to keep in mind is like Drata is 2 years old, right? From a revenue perspective, from a valuation perspective, we look like this college basketball player. But we're 2. We're still, there's still some stuff that we're working out on the platform that we're going to get better at that we couldn't have possibly done in 2 years. I have seen Drata in very unexpected mapping of controls to the criteria that is not following points of focus as noted in the criteria. How often do you review out how Drata presents the mapping? Great question. So we actually have a whole team built out here of former auditors and some pretty great SMEs. We are reviewing that on a monthly basis. And so again, customer feedback is great. If you find stuff that you have concerns about, we're obviously going to review that. But we have a whole team that's dedicated, and that team is getting bigger and bigger. It's one of the things that we're investing a ton in right now, especially as we start to go after other frameworks. We start to look at regional stuff with customers in EMEA and Australia, where it's stuff that we just don't cover yet today. So that's definitely top of mind for us. The problem is, again, still scaling, right? So that I'm sure there's some stuff that there's going to be some gaps, but our customers have been pretty influential in helping us identify those. So we appreciate it.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. What is your contact info?
Yeah, so if you have any questions about Drata, just ping partnerships@drata.com. You'll get a response in probably 5 minutes. Partnerships@drata.com, and then obviously we've got, we'll pull in RSI into that conversation as well to work with us.
All right. Any more questions before we decide to close it up? All right. Thank you so much, Kevin, over at Drata, and for joining us today. And thank you to Carlos and everyone that joined us today in the audience. We will be in touch tomorrow via email with a recording of the presentation slides, and your CPE certificate. If you have any questions, feel free to send us an email over to the RSI team or to the Drata team. We really appreciate all of your time today, and we hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
All right. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.